Welcome everybody, a very warm welcome on this very last session of day 3 of Learning Technology Summer Forum 2020. Today is sponsored by Brio, and I'm delighted to welcome you, Laurie. I've been a huge fan. I've been following a lot of your interventions at Learning Technology in the past few years, and so it's a huge privilege to chair today. You are an inspired L&D strategist with many years experience, I believe. We're not saying exactly how many. And you've developed a database methodology, a framework to help drive business transformation. But what I also love is how you also encourage inclusion at so many levels through your blogs and conversations. So I'm truly delighted to be part of this session today.
Thank you very, very much, Gail. It's a pleasure to be here, and that's a very lovely, lovely welcome. I'm very grateful.
So, today we are going to talk about the invisible LMS, and I guess that flows very nicely with what we've been saying in other sessions, which is putting the learners back at the center and making the technology disappear, which is what which we're achieving today with all those conversations in the chat and this global spontaneity. And a topic that please tell us how to make this LMS disappear, Laurie.
Wonderful. I will do my best. And thank you so much for all the wonderful welcomes. And it's a pleasure, really pleasure to be here, especially since we haven't had that face-to-face community, and seeing all the names there that I often see on LinkedIn. It's quite lovely. So thank you all for taking the time. And for the sake of everyone, I will do the session in English. So wonderful. So I'd like to talk about the invisible LMS and what this actually means, and what the learner experience is going to start to look like. So I'd like to begin with just a short little 15-second video, Gail, if the tech support team could kindly pull up. When you watch this video, it reminds me a lot of what it's like when we construct a learning system. We build these slides, and look at what the kids are doing. You'll see my favorite one is coming up. If you look on the right, go ahead and slide down on his face first. Why I love this slide, or why I love this video, is because we build these things, and we expect that people will work and use them the way that we built the ecosystem, the way it's designed. But the fact is, people are going to learn in ways that we can't even anticipate, and they will play. They will go and do what they need to do to get the results they're looking for. What I found also too really funny about this, and I see some of you are enjoying it in the chat pod, is when I showed this to my friend's daughter, the first thing she said about the slides was, the slides look like poop. So if that isn't bad design, I don't know what is. So it's just a metaphor, and I thought it would be something and that would be a good kickstart to some of the things we're going to talk about. So I'd like to begin with a poll question, just to quickly get us started and find out where the mindset is. And I'd like to ask, what do you think, honestly, about embedding marketing techniques into learning? We've heard a lot of talk about marketing, and we know that they've done a lot of really good things, but where do they overlap? Should they overlap? Because I know that we'll be talking about some of those techniques, and it'll be interesting. So I'd like to respond to those. We just get some coming in, some results.
Yes, we're giving a few more. We're going to wait a few more seconds, but quite a few questions coming in.
Yeah, sure. And I also see Christine said, yeah, if only I had one more system in my life. That's not what we wake up thinking. Metric, yeah. Marketing and learning, about communications, yeah. James, you're a marketing guy, so you see the overlap. Where's the choice to run new learning as an ad campaign? Travis, you are spot on the money, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. Learning campaigns with spaced events, as Colin says here. Simon, it has potential and for abuse. Absolutely, absolutely. Some people are saying, yeah, we want to treat our learners like customers. That's a really interesting perspective. And what do we have here also too? Yeah, Joan says, you know, I'm sure we can learn from a lot from others who are in marketing. And Richard, depends what type of marketing. Okay, not sure how I feel about cross-selling. We're not going to talk about cross-selling, Richard, but yes, I can totally understand those things. And not turn into push monsters. I love that phrase. That's a really good one. If it's obvious, it can feel patronizing. Yep. We got to be careful, and early marketing was that way. And Chloe's asking about marketing to push engagement. Not so much. Engagement to me is a funny word. I don't want us to track engagement. It's about putting things into context, and we'll talk specifically about that. So a lot of discussion here happened. Learning is a natural instinct where marketing is aimed at selling a product. Yes, that's absolutely true. And there's always an element of persuasion. I love that term of persuasion. I think that's absolutely what we're looking at when we look at these types of learning and this type of campaign. Yeah, and James, we can borrow all the following: customer insight, behavioral, oh yeah, all call to actions. You're using my CTA, excellent. Marketing is also market research. And I see some other people are going back to the original chat and changing the color of their font. Okay.
Well, we like it. It's colorful. It's bright. Brilliant. Shall we go back to our presentation, Laurie?
Absolutely. And I just saw quickly, Matt also said too about marketing campaigns. Yes. And that's a really interesting kind of topic, and that's what exactly we're going to talk about. In fact, we'll begin with the campaign. And this campaign actually begins, I'm embarrassed to say, with toilet roll. And it's funny I tell this story now because it happened to me pre-COVID when, you know, toilet paper was a hot commodity. But what happened is I go to the same grocery store once a week, a specialty one, and we go out of the way. My husband and I walk there. It's about 4 kilometers each way. And what happened one day is when I was walking there, I got a notification on my mobile device that said, here's a coupon for, you know, some percentage off of toilet paper. And first way, it was creepy. On the other hand, I'm cheap, and I was like, that's a really good deal. And why I found that interesting is it started to make me think about how all that marketing occurred and how it got to me at that particular point of need. So at the center of this is me. I was not stockpiling, Richard. This was before COVID, and I didn't know at the time. But look at the information it had around me. I had a loyalty card. So it knew it could tie me to some habits. It knew the time of day. I usually go at a similar time. So it knew that about me. And day of week, it's at the weekend, so they know I'm probably coming there on Saturday. It knows my family size. It's just my husband and I, and presumably from my previous, or from my loyalty card, it knew the last time I purchased toilet roll, and it could make an educated guess. I think this is creepy, but probably when I would need it again. Based on other families. We're just going to talk about these things. What can I say? I don't know if this was true, but it may have been also too by GPS. They could tell when I was coming closer to the store. And my history, right? So as I was saying, it knew when I purchased it before. It could put all these things together in a really dynamic way to be able to say, hey, we're going to push this piece of content of benefit to you right at this time. And it's really quite sophisticated. And it also made me think too, what if they sent the coupon on a Wednesday when I don't typically go, instead of Saturday? Would it have nudged my behavior in a different way? So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. There's all sorts of different levers that we can start to pull on in order to not just influence behavior, because that sounds very Machiavellian, but more about how to reinforce and create some paced learning on the go. So let's ask another poll question here, Gail. We could bring that up.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask here, how many of these companies do you know? And it'd be interesting. So there's Eloqua, Pardo, HubSpot, Constant Contact, Marketo. And I do see also too some interesting reactions happening over in the learning and marketing. So I'm not ignoring those. We will get to those. There's a lot of things happening right now in all the chat pods and polls here. So here we have some people. They are acknowledging they know one or two of them. And as Sanjeev points out, yeah, be capturing marketing content, consent and details. James, because you come from marketing, so you know these sneaky tools. Yes, you do. They're insidious. You know HubSpot, right? Okay, so you do know some of them. They're add-on for sales content. Yep, absolutely. So we're seeing that some people know these. For broadcasting the results, it's interesting that about 55%, so over half of you know none of these. Some say they sound familiar, and then there's a good, you know, about a quarter of you who say that you know about half of them. So it's an interesting split. Can we go back to the slides here?
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gail. So if we think about that, you engage actually with these companies every single day. You're probably touched by some form of these companies about 50 to 100 times a day. And that sounds really strange because you've never heard of them, but what they are marketing content engines. And you either are getting emails from them, text notifications, ad notifications, all of these things are coming from these companies that are essentially marketing to you, and they know a lot about you. A perfect example in a company called Target. They discovered, based on a young girl's loyalty card, she was 16, that based on what she was searching for, based on what she had purchased, they determined she was probably pregnant. And they sent marketing, like actual flyers, to the house, and her father intercepted them. This is a true story. And the father was furious, saying, how dare you market, you know, baby products to my daughter? And they said, we're very sorry, we thought she was pregnant. True story, she was pregnant. So that's how much data, and it's a scary thing if you think about like a marketing company or a marketing function knowing more about your child than you even know. And Donald, thanks for pointing out, yeah, the girl was pregnant. And actually, you've just given away something there. I was going to ask, what year did we think this happened in? And the year, actually, it was 2012. That's 8 years behind where we are right now. And that's a really, you know, that's kind of, you know, scary when we think of how far maybe behind we are a bit in terms of how we use data and what tools we have to use data. No problem, Don. I totally understand. I'm glad actually you put in the link. And Joan says, yeah, it's Facebook and TripAdvisor. Yes, they ping you certain content, right? So all this happens. Because the fact is, we don't go somewhere to be marketed to. You know, there isn't a destination. And so what marketers are trying to do is, well, they're trying to do several things, but a few of the terms that they use here are lead generation. And this is attracting strangers to your product. It used to be door-to-door salesmen, or now it's billboards, it's notifications on your phone, and all of that is trying to get people to notice or engage with their product and what they're doing. But here's where we need to also be clear. Marketing is not learning, right? Marketing is not just about getting people to notice your content, because that's not at all what we want. I mean, you can do that if you want and say, I've got a great course, you know, push a whole bunch of marketing on it. Isn't that wonderful? Marketing, their goal is to get you to keep on clicking. We don't want that. We don't want mindless consumption. So they'll give you the babies, the puppies, the things that will make you laugh or be interested or engaged, because they know it'll keep coming. They'll keep coming back for that dopamine hit. We, however, have to do things like policy and compliance and the hard things that really aren't a lot sometimes to smile about, or, you know, there's things that are more about process. And so it's not the same, and we can't expect them to be the same. We're giving them less of what they want and more of what we need. And yes, that's a really good question about privacy. And that's one that we will need to talk about, because we don't have cookies in learning, right? We have XAPI and SCORM, but we don't have that functionality. So it's something we need to be mindful of. What marketing also does, though, is they look at the process of deepening relationships throughout the sales funnel and what this looks like. So what they're trying to do is to drip feed content to you in a way that gets you to the finish line being a purchase. Okay? Our finish line is not a purchase. Our finish line is somebody doing a task or acquiring a new skill. It's a different performance outcome. It's learning something, however you want to call it. So it's very, very, very different. So let's look at how, though, we might use some techniques. So right now, or well, as of January 2020, this was the latest information I could get based on LinkedIn research, we have skills deserts in the following areas. There are roles that cannot be filled by that require these skills. And the top 5 are blockchain, cloud computing, analytical reasoning, AI, and UX. Probably not a surprise to any of us. And this is based on what jobs are being posted and what skills are required, and the number of people who have those skills in the LinkedIn database. Okay, so this is the discrepancy. So what can we do? Well, how about we send an email out to a cross-section of employees at your organization about blockchain? Now, if you do it with a marketing automation tool or some other tools that I'll talk about, you are able to see who opened the email, who not only opened the email, but who then clicked on a link, and then you'd be able to see who actually consumes the content. Put those 3 together, and now we're able to see a lot of what individuals are actually interested in the topic. And once we identify those pockets of interest, we're able then to now maybe put them into a campaign where we're sending them a little more information about the topic, a little more, and see if we can continue to lead that person along. So it might look a little bit like the following. And this is a very basic generic campaign. But what we've done is we've sent an email with new content. 2 paths. The email is ignored, okay, didn't create. Email is opened, and the content is consumed. These are 2 directions. The email is opened, we say, okay, let's give you a well done email. Let's try again. In 2 days, we'll send a video, okay? If the link is ignored, we say, okay, we're going to try something else. We'll maybe send it to Slack. Or if they view the video, maybe now we know they're expressing more interest, and we send an ebook link in 1 day. So you see how we start to create these campaigns where we're nurturing people through the content, and you'll be able to start to see who is interested and who is not. So if you think, for example, if you were a financial services company, if you were looking for blockchain, you may automatically assume that it's going to just be in your IT department. The reality is it may be people who are in your branches, it may be people in human resources, and we're going to need to mine those areas and pockets of curiosity and help them get deeper, because we just have too many of these gaps. Also, too, you see the opposite here, email ignored, and then you send something maybe to Slack because they are in Slack, they ignore it. You know what, you drop them out of the campaign. That's obviously not of interest to them. So if you keep doing this more and more and more, you start to understand, what works, what doesn't. You're going to start to see, too, what content people are consuming, what they're not, what their preferences are. You'll start seeing time of day, all of these things, and those campaigns start to get very, very, very complex. And this is just one picture of one marketing campaign. I didn't even bother enlarging it for you. I mean, these can go on and on and on and on and on. So it really, really, it becomes a science, actually. It really becomes a science. And again, this is not just about pushing out content, but it's pushing it to where it's relevant and where people are going to use it. Now, I'll pause and look at some of the things happening in the chat pod here. Contact Monkey, absolutely. That's another one, that tool that does that really, really well. You talk to your comms and marketing. Actually, that's one of my to-dos. At the end of the slide, you've taken it right out of my words right out of my mouth there. That's definitely a place to go, because they will have these tools. Joan asks, should L&D departments have a marketing specialist who can generate these types of campaigns? Yes, with a small y, because they can't be designed as marketing campaigns. they need to be designed as learning campaigns. And that's the very big difference, because I'd be afraid that you'd have just marketing campaigns happening, and their goals are very, very different. Again, we're doing the hard stuff. We're trying to put the tough things in. Like, it's about learning. It's not just mindless clicking, which is what marketing will do. So that's something, for us to be very, very mindful of. And then what happens is, as you get into, I like to talk about digital body language. This isn't my term. It comes from Steve Woods. I used to work for him at Eloqua. So I have a long history of that relationship. And what marketers are looking at is the preferred time, day, or week, media type. And by media type, please do not anybody quote me and saying I'm talking about learning style, because I am not. What I'm talking about is if somebody consumes a video, that may be because they're in an area with really good bandwidth, or it just fits in, or if they don't, it might be because they're on a 3G network. It's a whole bunch of things. This is not about learning styles, but it's about understanding just how you interact in your digital universe, which is very unique to you. Content style. Marketers are absolutely brilliant at knowing how content will work and how content will not work in terms of the tone. Learning tone, I think we can all agree, has become very much so textbooky. It's very much so, we're writing with a lot of clarity, and that's good. I don't want to get rid of the clarity, but we may need to think a little bit differently about writing more for digital and appreciating how digital does have a different sense, a different nuance. It's a little bit more casual. Colin here has a question here. When the content is compliant and has to be consumed, how you manage a campaign where there's no option to drop people out of it. There's a lot of ways you could do that. You could be creative and be like, you know what, you have to do it. We'll keep chasing you until you do it. It may be more you do a campaign around the why. If it's about safety, maybe you have like a quick, selfie video of somebody who was in a safety incident, and you run that as a campaign. So it's maybe not the campaign itself, but around the why. Yeah, you couldn't have them drop out if they're not interested. No, obviously not. But in other campaigns, you may want to be thinking about what ones you want to work with. James is also here. I'm not convinced marketing and L&D are that different. Yeah, change behaviors. True, they are. You want to change them from consuming a competitor product to consuming mine. Yes, that's absolutely true. A couple of other things. Content design is a constant struggle. I feel your pain, Sandy, especially probably in a law firm. There's a lot of legalese in that. And your conference presentations have to go through the brand police. Yes, such emails might need that. But here's a little trick. If you do some A/B testing with the tone, and by A/B testing I mean, sending content out in one format to a similar group of audience, and then sending a second type of content that has the same messaging to a similar group, you may be able to tell right from that what has more engagement versus what has less. There are marketers right now who are so precise in this, they even measure if I personalize an email that has your name to how many letters or words could be in the headline, to how long an email will be. They'll start to tell you by percentage what click-through rate it will have based on even the color. And it's really, really interesting here because also, like, this is just one example, and there's thousands of these online. You can put in your headline if you are a content writer, and it will analyze based on all the billions of clicks and the words that you have in your headline, what the likelihood it will drive traffic, shares, and search results, which is absolutely mind-blowing. I don't want us to go there. I don't want us to get that precise, because at a certain point, it's what are we manipulating, or what are we trying to actually influence? And that does make me a little bit nervous. But this is the degree to which marketing has gone. And when you think of what we typically are doing in L&D, we're pretty behind here. So let's continue on. For this, to be honest, L&D was going to need some new skills. And this isn't a surprise, but I think now too, with us just being hyper-focused into digital, there's going to be a really big magnifying glass being put on a lot of this. So it's going to be things like data analytics, which you already know. But we're also going to need new tools who build that. That's something where our gap is. There's not a lot of technology that actually does this to the level that, say, marketing would do. So it might be something, too, that you, as I said, talk to your marketing and comms department, see what they're already using, because chances are, well, not even chances are, they 1,000% are using some form of tool to do this type of thing. Learning about marketing automation. I did mention Steve Wood's book, and I see that the link has been put in there by Dawn. Thank you very much. It's an old book. And since I have COVID hair and the gray hair now to prove it, because we can't get a haircut here, these are old concepts. So we're playing catch up here in L&D. Campaign design. I'll be showing in the resources page. You can look up what campaigns look like and how you might extrapolate them to look like as something for L&D. Joan's got a hairdresser's appointment tomorrow. Yep. and oh, very interesting. Tim Ferriss got the title of his book by A/B testing online. Absolutely. And how many times do we just go product management 101? And I don't want us to get, again, do too much like marketers, because we do need the learning side of it, but there are some lessons. And also, too, as I said, writing for digital. And I see a lot of people who are saying, communications wouldn't allow that. There's a top-down approach. I'm really hopeful with this massive shift into digital over COVID that we'll start loosening up some of this, because we're going to start getting a lot of data to understand how people are behaving digitally and what they're doing and what actually works. So I'd like to look at some possibilities here. Or first of all, I talk about skepticism, my apologies. For those who are saying, we don't want to be like this, reframe a campaign that it becomes effective repetition-based learning. This is something we know works in learning. We're just automating it, which if you put that mindset on it, it doesn't feel so sinister. I think when people talk to me about marketing, they feel like it's very subversive and it's very clinical. But if we look at this as repetition-based learning, it is quite effective. So you can also look at, if any of you do Duolingo, how many times do I get that damn owl giving me a notification saying, looks like you haven't done your Duolingo, because they know how, if they do a certain path, that they'll be more successful at acquiring the language. So they give you those nudges. Think about it in terms of nudges. Think of it in terms of what we are drip feeding to get people engaged. And if we design them not just for consuming content, but we design them with activities, with opportunities, with practice. That's also, too, a really good way to frame your head around what a campaign is. I just see, someone just wrote, my owl popped up just before this. Yeah, there's that owl. I don't know how I feel about the owl. It works. It makes me go back. And for those who maybe say, Lori, are you wearing a tinfoil hat? Well, Microsoft, I'm sure you saw this, is adding a new learning app to Teams. If it's done the way I think it's going to be done, it'll be a lot of this type of work. It's going to be about, so my worry about the learning app in Teams is that it's going to, if they don't do it effectively, like what we're talking about using data, it's going to be like Clippy, sounds like you haven't met with your manager in 3 weeks, but can I schedule a meeting, right? We don't want it to do that. And then we also see here, I saw learning app in Slack. There are tons of learning apps in Slack right now that you can put their bots. That channels that you can go to. Filtered has one that's really interesting, and it curates and pushes content out to you. So when we're thinking of campaigns, it's not just about what people are doing in email. In fact, email will probably have the least amount of traction. You also want to think about where people are working, their teams. Slack, are they WhatsApp? Although some organizations probably would not want WhatsApp, but think of where the people are working. A really good thing you could do right now to get some of that data is to go onto the back end of Teams or Slack, whatever your company is using, and see some of the data. When are people logging in? What channels are they using? All that sort of data and how you fit in. Travis says here, yes, a new learning app might change a lot of how we maintain data in our organization, yes. And where I do want to pause there, because this was a point that was brought up before by Wojciech, is, okay, but there's also data privacy, and we do need to be thinking about that. And that's something that we haven't done a good job about. It's something that's very much so top of mind for me. We do need to respect this. I've had some people, clients come to me and say, hey, I want to know what people are consuming versus when they leave my company. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's starting to get personal, and how much data should a company really have about employees they're learning on their personal time? They're all ethical questions we're going to need to think about and wade our way through. But that said, I do think the genie is out of the bottle, and I think that's something we're going to need to be doing. I have a question here. Is the team learning app something that's a paid add-on? As I understand, they're soft launching it with some prototype clients, and then I don't know if it'll be paid or added on. My guess is it's not going to be paid, I'm guessing, because it could be part of your team. But again, it's to challenge you to think outside of just the email inbox, because there's a lot of other places you need to fit into where people are actually working. And as Dan says, or John says, yes, go to where the people are. I always say that if you don't go to where people are, you're now trying to change two behaviors: to get them to go to a new place and to get them to do something new. So we've really got to be quite mindful of that. So I'd like to look at what would be some possibilities here. All right, I want to learn Spanish, and I've been taking Spanish on an app. That information's been fed back to an LMS that I don't touch and I don't see. But it takes that information. Next time I'm asked to do my time entry, it says, hey, would you like to try and do it in Spanish? Because we know that you've achieved this. So you see how you can start putting in pull that data together for a really unique learning experience where people are actually able to practice. Here's another possibility. Oops. I seem to be missing a couple of slides, but that's okay, that's my fault. So I'll just read them here. So here's one that actually I was doing at one company. We were tracking whether people had taken their annual leave or not. And by the time it got to October, we targeted people who had not taken their leave with some content about mindfulness and the importance of slowing down and taking your vacation. And we were doing that in a better way. It was a much nicer way than saying, hey, you must take this. But it was trying to change the perspective and the feeling around it. So we ran some campaigns around that, targeted right to those specific people. And when they did book their annual leave, we took them out of the campaign because that had already occurred. Another possibility, say you're learning for a sales department, and you know that you need to have X number of targets or leads in your pipeline in order to meet your KPI, or meet your sales targets. If you're not meeting that by a certain date, an automated campaign will start being pushed out to you to get you the content that you need with triggers to get you to hopefully increase the number of leads that you have in your pipeline. This technology is actually being developed. There's one company, and the link will be here. I don't work for them. I'm not on their board. I just happen to be a huge fan, and it's called Sparks, developed by David Tosh. Really urge you to have a look at that. And these are the types of technology and tools that he's building into it, and it's really quite fascinating. And this, as I said, is the direction I believe we will be going. So for the last few minutes, I'd like to open it up into so I talked about this. What do you think about embedding them? What are the possibilities and barriers? So Gail, if you wouldn't mind opening up those two chat pods, and I see there's been a ton of chat, and I've tried to keep up with a lot of it, but I'm sure there's stuff I need to get back.
Oh, if you manage to do that and presenting, you are really Wonder Woman, Laurie.
But I'd love to know about possibilities and barriers. Let's be honest. And you also feel free to say, like, Laurie, you have been inside too long for COVID, and you're being a little crazy here. So I'd love to hear that. So barriers, infrastructure, absolutely, and yeah, people are going to be spooked by it. That's going to have to be. We may have to, maybe the GDPR. You have to give consent. Who knows? Possibilities, customization, yes. Data on learning needs, yep. You'll find out a lot of things. Better understanding of digital body language, yeah. And when you understand digital body language, you save money because you're designing things that are more effective. Yeah, just make the LMS invisible. Yep. I don't care how they know if you like this, you'll like that. Yep, absolutely. Increased engagement, true. Victoria, time and resources, yes. Anxious IT and data governance, IT budgets, culture, all of those things. Pushback from learners to question the ethics, yeah, and that's something that we're going to need to accept, that it may be something that you know, we have to consider. COVID budget, yeah. But I will say, that's why you talk to marketing and comms. They have this, and they may be willing to lend it. Be nice to them. I know we don't typically like marketing and comms because they control us as the brand police and stuff, but they might be, you know, they might be interested now, and you can get some collaboration. Very good point about overwhelmed with communications. You need to monitor that from the data. When you start to see disengagement, what does that look like? Mindful time off, absolutely. And some of the positives, spaced practice, really like that. And yeah, a lot of different marketing techniques are in use, yeah, for some time. Some people are really doing this. We just haven't talked a lot about that. Yes, best investment L&D can make is lunch with the marketing department. I would go one step further and say a socially distant lunch, but yes, that is where we want to go. It does assume that learners need motivation and learning is not driven by need. That's a true one. That's a true one. Staff turnover, how often would each campaign run? Interestingly enough, if you design the campaigns well, they will run by themselves. So you're not just designing once and done. You probably have at any given time maybe 50, 75 you know, campaigns running, and they will get triggered by people's behaviors, right? So it's an interesting way to do that. Love that term there, Sandy. If it's done right, it feels serendipitous, not intrusive. Yeah, we don't want to be creepy. I do not want us to be doing anything and creepy and untoward. Rigid HR structures, yeah, and preferences for the traditional LMS, yeah. And what I really predict will happen with those is you're going to see companies, because I experienced this transition when it happened in marketing. The marketing companies who did not embrace the new technologies and wanted to stay just in the old ways, they didn't survive. And they didn't have the results because they were seeing their competitors get those types of results. Fatigue, there are so many things to learn now. Yeah, absolutely need to be thinking about that. How about campaigns helping create champions and building from there? All great ideas. All great ideas. Yes, lack of understanding from senior L&D leaders. Yeah, we're going to be, we're really going to need to pushing back, and we really are going to need to you know, challenge our leaders. It's going to take, the change when this starts to happen, it's really going to come actually probably from the senior management level, pushing up to the CLO as opposed to the CLO. Very rare CLOs will see and get this. So it's going to be happening back and forth. All right, have I missed anything? Oh, L&D leaders need to have a wider experience. Absolutely agree. So having a look at all of this, I know I've covered a lot of information, and we're just short of about 8 or 7 minutes left. So I want to just address any questions that I haven't addressed, and I'm also just going to bring up here, there's an action steps that people can take. Maybe if we could enlarge the action steps, just so I make sure I get.
Yes, it's coming up. I hopefully, nope, sorry, that's my mistake. Here we go. It's coming back up. Here we go.
Wonderful. So these are a few things to look at. Bianca Baumann, she's got an absolutely brilliant website called biancabaumann.com. Have a look at it. True transparency. She actually was on my team at Eloqua. So that's where a lot of our thinking comes from, and it's all worlds come together. As I pointed out before, research some marketing automation campaigns because you'll start to see the magic in how those happen. Talk to your marketing and comms department, saying it again. And then with Sparks is just a tool that I find quite interesting. So, we'll put those out in shared resources, and I know Dawn has also been capturing those as well. In terms of questions I've missed, Gail, do you want to point some of those out?
I think you've done a pretty good job. I think we had a lot of questions and going but I think somehow we managed to cover it. So you did a great job. Thank you. I think my something I think we're all concerned about, because it's something, as you mentioned, that can be a little bit difficult to communicate up. Do you have an advice for the participants when you have to, where do you start? You know, what's the smallest possible step that you must take to actually get the ball in motion on a larger scale? Because it can be a bit daunting when you look at these bigger pictures of everything that you need to undertake to actually make this process happen. So how would you start, Laurie?
The best way is to start by not asking. What do I mean by that? Running a very small campaign, even if you have to run it manually with like 100 people, and getting some of the data on that. The reason that I say do that is because you will spend forever trying to change the behavior. You have to have evidence. And until we get enough use cases and until we get enough data where we can demonstrate value of this, it's going to be a very, very, very tough sell. So I would say,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the start is the data, right? It's the data collection. Mm-hmm. Is that where? And when an organization doesn't have a huge amount of infrastructure to collect data, how would you advise the L&D team to start on that front? Where do they? What's the question to ask? Okay. Beyond bomb and sit, obviously, you know, I do evaluate the needs and the existing content.
Yeah, a lot of people say they have no data. They actually do, unless they're just using, you know, rock, paper, scissors to do stuff. I mean, they will have something in terms of IT. They're probably, if they're really cheap, they're probably using Slack. That's going to give you a ton of data. They probably, if they don't have an intranet, chances are they have a Squarespace or something that they're using internally. That will give you a ton of data. When you look at HR, you can have some sort of HR function that'll tell you data about, you know, level of experience or, you know, what roles you still have open that you can't fill. You just need to know where to look for it. Data doesn't need to be this big complicated thing. It can be quite simple. It's just knowing where to start. There's actually on my blog, there is a toolkit that you can get started with data. That if you go through that, I've yet to come across a company that couldn't get at least 80% of the data on that, and that's a really good place to begin. And then once you know that, then you're in a position where, you know, you can make some more effective decisions, because, and it's not about that, that's also too how you get stakeholder involvement. Once you have data, the opinions are gone, and that really changes the conversation. It's hard to argue with that.
And I think that the point, isn't it, is that you need to take control of those data and start gathering them. We have you still have a chance. We still have a couple of minutes to collect more questions, but I just wanted to point out that we had a fantastic chat, haven't we, Laurie? Everybody was very involved, and a lot of information has been shared. And at the moment, the wonderful backer team, James and Don, are actually have collected all the information, shared them there, and they're going to stay there. And your slide, Laurie, are there as well to share. I've noticed that we also have, and I can't remember if we addressed it, so I apologize if we had. What's your question for Rob, from Rob Schumann? He asked, what are your tips for learning campaign when an organization has no way of contacting 150,000 of its learners? No email, no SMS, nothing.
Can't do it. I mean, I wish I had an answer, a magic answer to that. Or you can see if people will opt into it. That's the only thing that I would say. That's going to be a really big complication. So I wish I had a better answer. But I do see one here from Matt. Surely how you interpret the data can create lots of conversations. Absolutely. But I think in our industry we can agree that we reinterpret data in a lot of ways to make it look favorable to ourselves. And so, you know what you do, you have to be ethical about how you're looking at data and making sure that you're getting the right conclusions. I always recommend go to now more than ever, go to your local community college or university and see if there's a master's student, you know, who's studying data science, and bring them in for 3 months. It's something I highly recommend, and they will really set up a lot of those things for you. A/B testing, as Matt said, yeah, A/B testing is really quite phenomenal and very powerful tool, because that will give you concrete data where you can say, look, if we do it this way, it works. Qualitative data rather than just quantitative, yes, Yes. There's a lot of things that we need to look at.
And indeed a lot, but then I guess we've touched a little bit on it, is also the ethical aspect of data, because what is going to be done with those data, how they're going to be used, pro and con the employees, what decisions are going to be based on those data, and do you think it's a concern at organization level, Laurie? Is there work being done in the background?
It's absolutely. You need to, first of all, you need to know the laws that what you can do in your country and jurisdiction. So be very mindful of that. Make sure that you are in contact, and that's why marketing and comms can help you with that, because they will know that. And IT as well. So you really have to be mindful and respectful of that. And also think where we don't maybe have rules or regulations about, use your own ethical judgment. Like when I got that request, yeah, sure, I could look up, can I find a pattern between if people start doing a bunch of content and they resign? I could do that, but is it the right thing to do? No, it's not the right thing to do. And so that's why, my gut said to that, no, we're not going to. So also keep some of that sense check.
Thank you very much, Laurie. It was very insightful, and I guess data are key, but what we do with them is also something we need to reflect upon. It was a brilliant session about the invisible LMS. Thank you everybody who attended the session today. It's been a wonderful group, very involved, a lot of great conversations. It was hard to follow, wasn't it? And we are looking forward to seeing you all back tomorrow. Tomorrow is a full day. Today it was a rest day, we only had half a day. Tomorrow it's a full day, and then obviously Friday. Have a lovely day, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are in the world, and we're looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow.